Good morning, people. Welcome back to this very grey and dismal autumn morning. I'm on my way somewhere very exciting today. I've actually got the opportunity to go and pick up the still very new Kove 800 rally from Kove UK. I've got it for 4 or 5 days for testing over the weekend. On my way, I'm going to stop and get some brekkie on the way, and yeah, next time I check in will probably be at Kove UK. Alright, let's go say hi. Oh, got to ring the bell. So, welcome to Kove UK, Kove UK, Kove UK. Got to get this right. She is immaculate, and she's definitely not going to look like that at the end of the weekend. First start, let's get cracking. It's got an absolute bomb of bottom end. So much punch coming out of corners, and yeah, it howls up to the red line. It's fundamentally the same block that is present in KTM 790, but importantly, Kove say that it's had a completely redesigned head, different cam profiles, different followers, different oil pathways to entirely remedy the issues that plagued KTM in that 800 motor. Fundamentally a brilliant engine in the KTM, just let down by some well, important parts. So yeah, Kove say that has been rectified. Time will tell, of course, but there are some reports of some high mileage 800s now out in the wild. The standard exhaust can on this has got a real deep grumble to it. It's really nice. I'm going to get a microphone down there for you at some point in this video so you can have a listen properly. But definitely one of the nicer sounding exhausts on as a stock setup for sure. Kove and I are home. It was an interesting ride actually, lots of things highlighted, a few little niggles, but lots of really good bits. Tomorrow we are going to do a bit of off-road and going to give you a full breakdown of the bike, a walk around. I'm going to talk through sort of a mini verdict of, in the short space that I will have ridden it, as to my initial thoughts and of good and bad. There is so much grunt in this thing, so much punch in the mid-range. Like that fueling on light on the throttle isn't great, but as soon as you grab a handful, it doesn't feel lean anymore. There's really nice. Oh, that front end is so nimble on this bike. So nimble. Oh, it's chunky up here. That suspension tracks nicely. Right, let's get the high line. Oh, go on bike. Feet up. Feet up. Kids love a rev limiter, don't they? Kids love a rev limiter. Who am I kidding? I love a rev limiter. Everybody rides a motorbike loves a rev limiter. That front brake, whilst it's a bit lackluster on the road, more than ample off-road, and you know, just the beauty of it doesn't grab the front wheel like a twin disc setup might. Welcome everyone, and welcome to the Kove 800X Rally in all its glory. The stripped down, fire breathing, rally inspired, Dakar inspired bike from Kove. Among other things, thought we'd start by expelling some myths. Kove, founded in 2017 and has made quite the impact in the motorcycle industry over the last, predominantly the last 2 or 3 years. They have definitely mixed things up a little bit in the bike world, much to the dismay of some other brands. But I think it's a shuffle that the bike industry really needed. A new lease of life, shall we say, and something that to inspire other brands. They've now got some serious competition at what is good value performance equation. It's a strong proposition from Kove. So there's a few myths that have come about as a result of Kove and some other Chinese manufacturers in the industry, predominantly those of Chinese tat. It will fall apart. It's made of pig iron. Fill in the blank, right? There's so many different comments, phrases and derogatory terms that people have thrown at Chinese manufacturers. But something I think we often forget as consumers is that so much of our daily life is surrounded by Chinese engineering. Lots of our household equipment and products, our cars, even expensive brands, BMW, Mercedes, etc., etc. Again, fill in the blank. They all use some Chinese products. The amount obviously varies depending on what it is that you're talking about, but Chinese engineering is not what it once was. They are a genuine contender in the market nowadays, and as you can see from Kove, they are a genuine contender in the motorcycle industry. So I met with, when I picked this bike up yesterday, from Steve Collett in Kove UK, something that he was really passionate to impart on me was the importance of racing and testing and data that Kove put on their business model. They are literally obsessed with collecting data. They are obsessed with developing new product, not just copying or cloning, but actually developing in-house. So for an example, they now have an engine company, an assembly line, a frame factory, a silencer factory. They have a full vehicle bench test for engines and chassis. They also have a 3D inspection facility for quality control. Having all of these things in-house and in China obviously helps them bring the price down because it is all done under one roof. They are absolutely obsessed with developing the best possible product. Now, does that currently translate into the best possible product for the money? Difficult question to answer, one that I'm going to try and do for you. So the bike in question here is, of course, the Kove 800X Rally. The 800, they also do the 800X Adventure, they do the 800X Pro, and then the Rally. The Rally, as featured here, is the stripped down fire-breathing version. The other two have various other rider aids, cruise control, fly-by-wire throttle. They have slightly less suspension travel, whereas this bike here has the Yuan 270mm fully adjustable 49mm chassis fork, 250mm of travel at the rear. This bike doesn't have the rider aids that you will see on other bikes. It has your classic cable throttle. It doesn't have cruise control because there's no fly-by-wire. It doesn't have pillion pegs. It has a single front brake disc conversion rather than the twin that you would traditionally see on an 800cc bike. There are many things about this bike which is a no frills. It is designed to go quickly off-road, which I should add is this bike's saving grace, because there are a few things that I will call Chinese quirks, and I'll affectionately call them, just for fun, chirks. So this bike does have a few chirks. Now, let's run through them before we get to the bit that's really important. How does it ride? So there's a few things that kind of irritate me about the bike. The grips are uncomfortable. The display, it has a lot of space with not much information. Now, you could add, if you're going really quickly off-road, which this bike is designed to do, you're not spending much time staring at the screen. Granted, you are indeed correct. There's a few other things that are kind of niggle me. The front brake doesn't have a huge amount of bite. Now, off-road, it's more than adequate. On the road, I mean, it will slow you down, but it does leave you a little bit wanting when you're coming into a corner hard because it doesn't have the bite that you might expect. The exhaust here, the cat that sits at a funny angle. So when you want to dip your heels in hard off-road, or when you're stood up, or if you want to stand properly as you should, your heel brushes the exhaust and it turns your heel away from the exhaust. So it gives you a slightly odd stance on the foot pegs. Now I'm sure with an aftermarket system and that gets removed and you can get your heels in the right position, but it is kind of annoying. The secondary, this Euro 5 Plus, they have to have a pre and post catalytic converter O2 sensor. The cable here just strikes me as being fairly precariously placed. You know, you catch that on a twig or something or off-road and that's getting pulled straight out. So maybe there's something that needs doing there. A few other chirks. The switchgear feels classically a little bit plastic. It all works functionally fine, but it doesn't feel that refined. Some of the warning tabs that come up on the display when you select certain things, it's all still in Chinese. Now, I've got no issue with that, but for the European market, it would be nice to see it in the language that you choose. So yeah, there are a few little things that maybe could do with some refinement. You can't adjust the reach on the brake or the clutch lever. So, you know, there's some little bits that I would like to change. This bike specifically doesn't come with a rack. Again, it is a stripped down bike designed to go quickly off-road. What I would like to talk about is the stance of the bike. Now, when you stand on the pegs on this bike, you can tell it's been designed by someone that is much better than me on a bike and can ride off-road at some serious pace. The stance is aggressive. Even at my short 5'7" stature, the gap, the space between here and the pegs isn't massive. Now, for taller riders, that might feel a bit cramped. It does feel a bit tight between the knees, even for me when I'm seated. But when I stand up, I can get my heels in really deep and there's still space for me to get aggressively over the front of the bike. Now, what that means when riding off-road is there's a superb balance about this bike. It honestly, you need to ride it to believe it. It feels so light, it feels so nimble. And like I say, that really aggressive off-road riding position is something I haven't really felt like on my KTM 790 or on my friend's Tenere or on another friend's Touareg. That is actually quite a nice riding position on the Touareg, but this feels like a proper off-road rider's adventure bike is the most cliche kind of non-exciting way of describing it. Because of how the weight is held so low down in this bike, this is all plastic. The subframe, the tank actually sits under the seat onto the subframe, so it keeps the weight really low. The bike weighs 179 kilos as you see it with 5 litres of fuel in the tank. So it's going to be the upper ends of 180 when it's full of fuel. Staggeringly light for a bike of this sort of power and intention. And honestly, riding it off-road, I've never felt anything like it. The front end is light and nimble, yet that stance that you have gives you front end grip. So basically what I'm saying to you is that despite the chirks, these Chinese quirks, this bike is not perfect. There are some niggles, there are some things that need refining. However, the riding experience off-road truly is something pretty special. So, the age-old question, would I spend my money on this bike? When I first rode it back from Kove yesterday, I'll be honest, I was kind of, I'd already kind of not dismissed it, but made my mind up, and that was wrong of me to do so. There are, like I say, these Chinese quirks, let's just call them quirks, because some of these things exist on bikes that aren't just Chinese, but in this instance, there are some quirks that at times they feel like a deal breaker. However, the more I've ridden it, the more I've started to realise that actually the riding experience off-road truly is superb. Now, are these other things going to annoy you enough that you wouldn't want to buy one? I actually don't think so. Would I spend my money on this? Yes, I think I probably would. Admittedly, there are some things I would immediately do to the bike if I bought it. The fueling down low on light throttle isn't very good. It's very snatchy. Of course, once you're into quarter throttle or half throttle or really like rolling on, there's just bundles of power and the fueling is smooth right to the red line. But the low speed stuff is a bit jerky. I would probably have it remapped from the get-go, or have that sorted. It feels lean at the bottom end. I'd probably have that richened up a little bit, let the professionals do their things. I would obviously fit some handguards, and I would probably change the levers to something adjustable, just because it's nice to have adjustable levers. I would fit a small rack with some grab handles, and that would probably be about it. I would then go and ride this bike. Oh, I would probably put a slightly chunkier sump guard on. It's actually not bad as far as standard sump guards go, but it's definitely not meaty enough for what I would want to use the bike for. Other than that, I would say this is a bike that will potentially blow your socks off, and just don't judge it too soon. So kind of the verdict is that yes, I'm pretty sure I would have one despite all of those little quirks, which definitely says something, because for a brand and manufacturer that has come into the industry and stirred things up, and from a handling perspective, which arguably Kove would say is the most important part of their business, the data, the development, the riding experience, they really have created something that is going to stir the pot. So chapeau is all I will say. I hope you've enjoyed this sort of first ride review. As you'll know from the channel, these are kind of new to me, and I want to do more. So any tips, advice, things that you'd like to see more of. The thing I like doing is really geeking down on the tech. So if there's plenty I've missed. There's so much to talk about on this bike, so much to talk about. But if I've missed anything in my rambling in this video, then please let me know. And if you really want to see how this bike is to live with, the next video dropping soon will be a 2-day trip that I'm going on with my cousin. So we're going to actually put the Kove through its paces in terms of an actual adventure ride. So I'm going to strap some luggage to the back of this thing, and I'm going to get out there and I'm going to live with it for 2 days. So that's the next video that's coming. Big shout out to the people that kind of support me, and a big shout out to Kove for lending me this bike for a few days to bring this content to you. Thanks for watching. If you like this, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe. Let's engage, let's have a chat, and see you on the next one.